My mother does not knock, she never has. The front door flies open so hard it hits the wall, and I am standing in the middle of my own living room holding a mug of coffee that suddenly tastes like dust. My mother, Linda, strides in. First, lips pressed in that familiar thin line of judgment. My older brother Mark follows with two overstuffed suitcases banging against his legs, like he is arriving at a hotel he already owns. Nice place, Mark says, looking around as if he is appraising inventory. Still feels too big for one person, though. My heart starts pounding in my ears. I did not invite them. I did not even tell them I was home today. Mom, what are you doing here? I manage. My voice sounds small, even to me. She glances at me, then wanders farther into the living room, her gaze drifting over the built-in shelves, the soft gray sofa, the framed photos of my team and my friends, not my family. You think this house is really yours, Rachel? She asks, her tone cutting. You living here all alone with all this space. Family comes first. We will be taking the back bedrooms. Just like that, as if my home were a spare coat she was borrowing without asking. Mark lets the suitcases fall onto my hardwood floor with a heavy thud. The sound makes something twist in my chest. Those floors are mine. I refinished every plank myself, sanding until my arms shook, staining late into the night with a headlamp on my forehead and a podcast in my ears. Every inch of this place has my sweat in it. But if you had seen us years earlier, you might not believe this moment. My name is Rachel Morgan. When all of this started, I was 32 years old and certain I finally had my life under control. I had a good job, a little savings, and what I thought was a respectable kind of American success story. I had also spent my entire life trying to make my mother proud. I did not know yet that revenge in real life rarely looks like movie scenes. Sometimes revenge is simply refusing to let someone cross your threshold again. Sometimes it is dialing 3 simple numbers and choosing yourself. I will tell you exactly how I got from being the good daughter who helps everyone to calling the police on my own mother and brother. But before I do, I want you to picture something. Imagine you help your family for years. You pay their bills. You answer late-night calls. You save them from eviction notices and credit card collectors. Then the one time you desperately need help, they let you drown and call it a lesson. Now imagine those same people walking into the house you nearly lost, dropping suitcases on your floor and announcing they are moving in. Would you let them stay? Or would you finally draw the line? Before my life turned into a full-blown family drama, it honestly looked pretty normal from the outside. The kind of story people nod at politely during small talk. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood outside Seattle with my mother, my older brother Mark, and my younger sister Chloe. My father walked out when I was about 12, leaving a short note on the kitchen table and a credit card balance that made my mother sit down on the floor and cry. That night I learned something important. In our house there was no cavalry coming. Mom took on every shift she could find. She worked at a grocery store bakery in the mornings, then cleaned offices at night. Mark was the golden child who could have done anything if life had been kinder. That is what Mom liked to tell anyone who would listen. Chloe was the peacemaker, always smoothing things over, always explaining away someone else's bad behavior. And me, I did my homework. I babysat. I clipped coupons. I swore that when I got out, I would never ever feel that helpless again. I worked my way through college with loans and part-time jobs, then landed a position at a mid-sized advertising agency called Harborline Media. I started as an account coordinator, answering emails and color-coding spreadsheets. Over time, I climbed late nights, last-minute presentations, learning to say absolutely when my insides wanted to say, "Are you kidding me?" By the time I hit my early 30s, I was managing some of the company's biggest clients. The pay was solid, the health insurance was decent, and people actually asked my opinion in meetings. In that world, promotions were like birthday wishes. You waited and hoped someone noticed. The first time my boss hinted I was partner material, I felt a quiet, private pride. The kind of pride you do not brag about because you are half afraid it will disappear if you look at it too directly. My mother loved telling people I worked in marketing, even though she did not fully understand what I did. She loved even more that I could send money. When her car needed new brakes, she called me. When Mark's latest big business idea left him with a mountain of credit card debt, he called me. When Chloe's hours got cut at the hospital and rent came due, she called me. I wired money, I paid off balances, I bought groceries and covered overdue electric bills. I told myself this was family parents, a brother, a sister. That is what you do. But looking back, the phrases that should have been red flags sounded so normal at the time. You have more than we do. Rachel, you are good with money, you will figure it out. You do not have kids, you can afford it. When I finally scraped together enough for a down payment on a house, I did not tell anyone until the closing papers were signed and the keys were in my hand. I remember that day more vividly than birthdays or Christmas mornings. The house was a modest craftsman-style place on a quiet tree-lined street. Nothing like a mansion, but to me, it looked like the picture of stability. 3 small bedrooms, a narrow porch, a backyard with a tired old maple tree leaning over the fence. Not fancy, but mine. I walked through the empty rooms with my socks sliding on the scratched wood, tracing the edges of my new beginning with my fingertips. This is it, I thought. No landlord. No surprise rent hikes. No one threatening to sell the place out from under me. I invited my family over a week later once I had painted the living room and set up a second-hand couch I bought online. Mom arrived with a plant in a chipped ceramic pot and a comment that landed like a dart. All this space for one person, she said, looking around. Must be nice. Mark strolled through each room whistling softly. Hey sis, when my next business takes off, maybe I will crash here for a while, he joked. Save on rent, you know. Family helps family. Chloe hugged me tight in the kitchen and whispered, I am so proud of you. She meant it. I clung to that. What I did not understand then was that somewhere deep down, my mother and my brother were keeping score, and they did not like the way the numbers added up. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, mandatory all-staff meeting. You know that feeling when a storm rolls in and the air changes before the rain actually starts? That was the office that day. People whispering near the coffee machine, doors closing, managers huddling. We all crowded into the largest conference room, balancing on the edge between denial and dread. My boss avoided my eyes. The owner of the agency stood at the front, hands gripping the lectern like it might float him to shore. I will get straight to it, he said. Harbor line. Media is shutting down operations effective immediately. There it was. No dramatics. Just a sentence that sliced through my carefully arranged life. He talked about losing major clients, about the economy, about advertising budgets being frozen. We would receive severance, he said. 2 weeks, health benefits for another month. He spoke for maybe 15 minutes, but it felt like the floor had been quietly pulled away beneath all of us. I boxed up the photos on my desk and the mug Chloe gave me one Christmas. I turned in my keycard and walked out into the pale afternoon light, with my entire career at that company squeezed into one cardboard box. At home, I sat at my kitchen table with a blank notebook and my laptop doing math that did not care how hard I had worked. Mortgage, utilities, food insurance, savings on one side, bills on the other. If I cut every non-essential expense, I could coast for maybe 4 months comfortably, 5 or 6 if I squeezed. I told myself a story. I am good at what I do. I have connections. I will land somewhere quickly. Maybe I would even use this as a chance to ask for the salary I truly deserved. You can probably guess how that went. I updated my resume. I applied for every position that remotely matched my skills. I wrote cover letters that walked the line between confident and desperate. I took calls with recruiters who used phrases like overqualified, and we have decided to move in a different direction. Weeks turned into months. Every we have gone with another candidate chipped away something inside me. The job market in marketing and advertising had tightened. Companies were cutting budgets, not opening new positions. The first month I paid my bills from my checking account like normal, pretending this was temporary. The second month I started dipping into savings. The third I canceled every streaming subscription, stopped meeting friends for dinner, and started buying store-brand everything. For the first time since childhood, food became a calculation. Cans that could stretch into several meals. Pasta, rice, frozen vegetables instead of fresh. Still, the mortgage payment glared at me from my calendar like a big red warning sign. That is when I did something I had never done before. I called my mother and asked for help. I rehearsed the conversation in my head beforehand. I told myself I was not asking for a gift, just a temporary loan. After all the times I had helped her, helped Mark, helped Chloe, surely they would be there for me now. That is what parents and siblings do, right? I called my mother first. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Do you have a minute?" A long sigh on the other end. The sound of a television in the background. "Make it quick, Rachel. I am in the middle of a show." I explained what had happened at Harborline. I told her the severance would not last long, that I had interviews, but nothing concrete yet, that I was trying to keep my mortgage current so I would not lose the house. "I just need a little help with one payment," I said, feeling my throat tighten. "I can pay you back once I am working again. You know, I have always paid my debts." There was a silence that stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Mom's voice came back, cool and distant. "I do not see how I can help you. Rachel, money is tight for everyone. You were the one who chose that expensive house. You always thought you were better than us with your big job and your nice things." Her words hit harder than the layoff. "Mom, that is not fair. I have helped you so many times." "That was different," she snapped. "You always had extra. You never had kids, never had a real family to support. Maybe this is a lesson. You flew too close to the sun, and now you know how the rest of us live." A lesson, that is what she called it. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the plant she had brought on my housewarming day. Its leaves drooped. I realized I had forgotten to water it. I wiped my face and called Mark next. "Hey sis," he answered, "what is up?" I told him the same story. The layoff, the job search, the numbers that were not adding up. "Look," I said, swallowing my pride. "I am not asking for much, just help covering one mortgage payment. I can draw up something in writing if that makes you more comfortable." He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Who told you to buy a big house, Rach? You always had to show off, proving you were the successful one. You should have rented like the rest of us." "I spent years saving for the down payment," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "I worked myself sick. Mark, you know that." "Well, I just put everything into a new business venture," he said. "I cannot bail you out of your bad decisions." Bad decisions. That is what my house was to him. Chloe was my last hope. She listened quietly as I explained, her voice soft when she finally spoke. "Oh, Rach, I am so sorry," she said. "I wish I could help, but you know I am barely making rent. And if Mom found out I gave you money after she said no, she would lose it on me. So you are choosing her." I said I did not mean it to come out so flat. "I am just trying to keep the peace," she whispered. "You know how she gets." I did. I knew exactly how she got. I just did not realize how completely they would all line up behind her. When I hung up, the house felt different. Smaller and bigger at the same time. The walls seemed to lean in, listening. The rooms that had been my pride now felt like accusations. The one time I needed them, my parents and siblings had not just stepped back. They had judged me for falling. If you have ever been in that place, you know what comes next. The nights get longer, the job applications start to feel pointless, and the silence from the people you expected to show up gets louder than any rejection email. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that is not just physical, the kind where getting out of bed feels like lifting a car, where your brain runs worst-case scenarios in the background of everything you do. That was my life for a while. I applied for jobs in the morning and stared at my bank account in the afternoon. I canceled everything I could, cooked the cheapest food I could find, and kept paying the mortgage by selling pieces of my comfort. Extra furniture, jewelry I never wore, a designer handbag I once bought to celebrate a promotion. I lay awake at night staring at the ceiling fan, imagining the bank letters that would start arriving if I missed a payment. I pictured losing the house, packing my life back into boxes, returning to some small rented space with loud neighbors and thin walls. One night around 3 in the morning, I realized I was waiting for something that was not coming. A job offer, a miracle, a family member changing their mind. None of that was under my control. What I did have was a set of skills that did not vanish when Harborline closed. I knew branding, content, social media strategies, copywriting. I knew how to make small companies look bigger and help big companies feel more human. So I opened my laptop and for the first time stopped searching job boards and started typing my own website address into an empty browser tab. By sunrise, I had written a basic description of my services and picked a name, Beacon Street Creative. It sounded a little cheesy, But in that moment, I needed to believe there was still light somewhere. I printed simple flyers at the library and walked around my neighborhood, leaving them with small businesses. A bakery on the corner, a yoga studio, a family-owned hardware store that still used a handwritten sign. My first client was the bakery. The owner, a plump woman named Sandra with flour on her cheeks, looked at my flyer and laughed. "You know how to use that Instagram thing?" she asked. "Yes," I said more confidently than I felt. "I can help bring more people in here for your morning coffee and muffins." She offered me a tiny monthly retainer that would once have made me scoff. I accepted as if she had handed me a lifeline. From there, it was slow and messy. I worked at my dining table, juggling deadlines and invoices, setting up social pages, writing email campaigns, tracking numbers to prove my strategies were working. During those early months, I met my neighbor across the street, an older woman named Ellen, who had a habit of showing up exactly when I needed another human being. One afternoon, she knocked on my door holding a casserole dish. "You look like you have forgotten how to feed yourself," she said with a warm smile. I made too much. We sat at my small kitchen table eating cheesy pasta and talking. She told me about the husband she lost years earlier, about working as a nurse for decades. I told her about Harborline, about the house, about how my family had reacted when I asked for help. She listened without interrupting, her blue eyes kind but sharp. "Sweetheart, that is not family," she said softly when I finished. "That is a trap." Her words settled into me like a seed. My second major client was a small restaurant run by a man named Leo, a quiet single father who needed help filling tables without spending a fortune on ads. I redesigned his menus, rewrote his copy, and built a simple campaign around his weekly specials. Within a month, his Friday nights were booked solid. "You saved my business," he told me one evening as I sat at the bar going over the next month's posts. "If you ever need anything, you call me first." That line stuck with me too. Not because I planned to ask him for money, but because it was the first time in a long time someone had offered help without strings attached. It took nearly a year, but slowly, Beacon Street Creative became a real business. One month I realized I had paid every bill, including the mortgage from my income alone, without touching savings. I sat at my kitchen island staring at the numbers and felt something strange hope. I had rebuilt, not with my family's help, but despite their absence. I did not know it yet. But that fact would become the foundation of the revenge. I never planned. By the time 2 full years had passed since my layoff, Beacon Street Creative was no longer just me and my laptop at the dining table. I had a small but loyal roster of clients, most of them small businesses, a handful of regional brands that had heard about me through word of mouth, and more work than I could handle alone. The first time I admitted I needed help, it felt almost like failing. Then I remembered how it had felt to be alone when I fell, and I decided this time I would build something different. I hired a young designer named Mia, part-time. She worked from the spare bedroom I had turned into a makeshift office. Her energy was bright, her ideas modern. She had grown up with social media as a second language, and she pushed me to try new formats, short videos, behind-the-scenes clips. Later, I brought on a copywriter named Ben, a single dad who worked remote while his toddler napped. Slowly, my house transformed from a quiet place where I worried into a hub of creative chaos. Coffee cups on coasters, sticky notes on the walls, laughter drifting down the hallway during brainstorming sessions. I updated the website and changed the branding, leaning into our new identity as a boutique agency, Beacon Street Agency. My social circle grew, too. Ellen became my anchor on the block, introducing me to her bridge group and her book club. Leo began inviting me to friends and family nights at the restaurant, where I met servers, chefs, and regulars who treated me like part of the furniture in the best way. One summer evening, we celebrated the agency's first big regional campaign on my back deck. Mia brought cupcakes. Ben showed up with his sleepy little girl. Leo arrived with trays of appetizers, and Ellen carried over a salad and a bottle of wine. As string lights flickered over our heads, I looked around and realized something quietly shocking. I did not feel alone anymore. These people knew me in the present tense. Not Rachel, the kid who did her homework at the kitchen table while her mother ranted about bills. Not Rachel, the convenient lender, when someone came up short. Just Rachel. My biological family remained mostly absent by my choice as much as theirs. My mother occasionally left voicemails more to demand than to inquire. I heard your cousin got a promotion, she would say. You should call her. She could put in a good word for your business, and you need to send some money for your grandmother's birthday gift. We are all pitching in. I stopped answering. Mark sent one text asking if I wanted to partner with his latest venture. I replied with a single sentence, no thank you. Only Chloe lingered on the edge of my life, sending short messages now and then. How are you thinking of you work? Okay, I answered politely but cautiously. The wound from that phone call about the mortgage had not fully healed. Then one rainy afternoon, I ran into her at a coffee shop downtown. Rachel. I looked up from my laptop and almost did not recognize her at first. She looked older than the few years that had passed. Tired shoulders a little hunched, as if she had been bracing herself for a storm that never let up. We sat together and she told me their story. Mom had lost her job at the grocery store. Age discrimination was not spoken aloud, but it hung in the air. Mark's latest sure-thing business had imploded, leaving him with debts he could not pay. They had downsized from their small apartment to an even smaller one in a rough neighborhood. I am sleeping on a pull-out sofa, Chloe said, eyes on her coffee cup. They are in the bedrooms. Bitterness flickered through her expression for the first time. Mom says you abandoned us, she added quietly. That you decided you were too good for your family once you had your house and your fancy clients. She says family should help family. There it was again, that phrase. Family helps family. Did she tell you what she said when I asked for help? I asked. My voice shook a little. Chloe shook her head. Of course she did not, I said. So I told her. I described the phone calls, the judgment, the lesson my mother said I needed. I watched Chloe's face crumble. I should have done more, she whispered. I knew it was wrong. I was just scared to go against them. I am still scared. I believed her, I did. But fear explained, not excused. Why are you telling me all this now? I asked. Because I miss you, she said. And because they talk about your house all the time now. How unfair it is that you have so much space while we are crammed together. They say you owe it to us to share. A chill crawled up my spine. You are not here to ask me to let them move in, are you? Her eyes flew to mine, wide and hurt. No, she said too quickly. No, I just wanted to see you, to reconnect. I wanted to believe that I wanted to hug my sister and pretend we were kids again, huddled together in our shared room while our parents argued down the hall. So I did what I always did. I gave the benefit of the doubt. But this time, I made myself add something new. I am willing to rebuild something with you, I said carefully. But I need you to understand. There are boundaries now. I will not give your mother or Mark money. I will not let anyone move into my home. If they are struggling, I am sorry, but their choices are their responsibility. She nodded. I get it, she said. I promise I'm not going to ask you for that. I looked at her over my coffee and hoped that promise would hold. I did not realize she had already broken it. Which brings us back to the day my front door flew open. My mother stands in my living room like a queen returning to a province that has forgotten its allegiance. Her eyes skim the walls, the furniture, the plants that are finally thriving. It really is a waste, she says half to herself. All this for one person. Mark is already rolling one suitcase toward the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. Hold on, I say, finding my voice. What is going on? Why are you here with luggage? Mom sighs dramatically, as if she were the one who has been inconvenienced. Our building is being condemned, she says. Code violations, they said. We had to be out in a week. We need a place to stay while we figure things out. Your sister told us you were doing well, that you had room. So here we are. That chill at the coffee shop returns racing through my veins. Chloe told you to come here. She said you still lived in this big house all alone. Mark calls over his shoulder as he marches toward the back bedroom. Said it was ridiculous. You would not help your own family. So we gave notice on the apartment. No point paying rent when you have space. You already gave notice. My voice cracks. You moved out before talking to me. We knew you would say yes. Once you understood, Mom replies. You have always had a soft heart, Rachel. And we have nowhere else to go. Family helps family. It hits me then. The suitcases are full. Not for a weekend, but for a life. Papers poke out of Mom's bag. A stack of mail. Medicines. There is a blanket rolled and tied with cord. They have moved out. They plan to move in. No, I say. The word feels foreign at first, but then it starts to fit. You cannot stay here. Mark stops in the doorway of the back bedroom and turns slowly. Do not be dramatic, he says. You have 3 bedrooms. You barely use 2. You do not even have a husband or kids. We will take this one. Mom can have the other. You keep your precious office or whatever. I step between him and the hall. This is my home, I say. My palms sweating. I bought it with my money. I keep it with my business. You do not get to decide you live here. My mother's face darkens. What kind of daughter turns her own mother away? She demands. What will people think when they hear you put your family out on the street? They can think whatever they like. I answer. My voice is shaking, but the words are clear. You turned your back on me when I was one missed payment from losing this place. You called it a lesson. You said I was showing off. You do not get to show up now and claim my work. Mark snorts. That was years ago. You are fine now. You have your little company, your clients, your nice neighborhood. You seriously cannot spare a couple of rooms. Spare, I repeat. You are not asking for a few nights. You've already moved out. You assumed I would have no choice but to let you stay. Mom crosses her arms. We are not leaving, she says. You owe us, Rachel. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. This house would not exist if it were not for us. Your father always said property should stay in the family. We will contest it if we have to. My father has been gone for decades, and he had nothing to do with this house. But she says it with such conviction that if I were less certain, I might doubt my own memory. Something in me snaps into focus. This conversation is over, I say. You need to take your things and go. We are not going anywhere, Mark replies, taking a step closer. There is a hardness in his eyes I have seen only in his worst moods. Stop acting like some judge and jury. You are not better than us, Rachel. You just got lucky. The tables can still turn. He means it as a threat. I hear it as a warning. I take a slow breath. Then you are leaving me no choice, I say quietly. This is trespassing. If you do not walk out, I will call the police. Mom laughs a sharp, bitter sound. You would not dare. No one calls the police on their own mother. That would make you look like a monster. Would it? Or would it make me look like a woman who finally learned to protect herself? My hands are trembling as I step back, move around them and open the front door. I stand on my own porch, the air cool against my flushed face, and I pull my phone from my pocket. Every part of my upbringing screams at me not to do this, to give in, to swallow my anger, to make room to let them take. Instead, I dial 3 numbers. Emergency dispatch. A calm voice answers. What is the address of your emergency? My name is Rachel Morgan, I say. My voice sounds strange to my own ears, but steady. There are 2 people in my home who refuse to leave. They are not invited. I'm afraid if I try to force them out myself, things will escalate. I need help. The dispatcher asks if there are any weapons. I tell her no. She asks if I feel physically threatened. I tell her the truth. I do not think they will hurt me, I say. But they are trying to force their way into my life and my house against my will, and I need them gone. She takes my information and tells me officers are on their way. I stay outside on the porch because if I go back in now, I know my mother will drag me into another argument designed to confuse me, to twist my memories, to make me question my right to my own front door. Within minutes, a patrol car turns onto my street. My heart begins pounding again, but this time from a strange mix of fear and relief. 2 officers step out, a woman and a man, both calm, both alert. Ms. Morgan, the female officer, asks as they approach. Yes, I say, exhaling. I am Officer Green. This is Officer Henson, she says. Tell us what is going on, I explain. I tell them how my mother and brother arrived unannounced with packed suitcases, how they declared they were moving in, how they refused to leave when I asked them to. I give them the short version of the past years, the layoff, the refusal to help, the estrangement, the way they have tried to rewrite the story. When I finish, the front door opens behind me. There you are, my mother says dramatically. Officers, thank goodness you came. My daughter is having some kind of breakdown. We came to help and she has locked us out. The transformation is instant. Her voice changes all wounded innocence and maternal concern. Mark stands behind her, eyes wide, playing his part. Officer Green's expression does not shift. Ma'am, we are here because Ms. Morgan called us, she says evenly. Can you tell me your full name and your relationship to her? I am her mother, she says. as if that should end the conversation. This is my son, her brother. We are family. We have a right to be here. Do you live here? Officer Henson asks. We will be. Mark cuts in. Her building where we were living got condemned. We have nowhere else to go. She has 3 bedrooms and lives here alone. She is being selfish. Sir, that was not my question, the officer replies. Do you currently have any legal lease, sublease, or ownership interest in this property? My mother bristles. We do not need paperwork. This is a family home. Her father always said property stays with blood. We are staying here until we find another place. Officer Green turns back to me. Ms. Morgan, do they have permission to be here? No, I say. My voice feels stronger now. They are not tenants. They do not live here. I did not invite them. I have asked them to leave and they refused. Do you have documentation showing ownership of the house, she asks. Yes, I say. I go inside, heart racing, past my mother's blazing glare, and retrieve the folder from my office where I keep my deed and mortgage statements. I hand them to Officer Green on the porch. She reads them carefully, then nods. The property is in Ms. Morgan's name, only, she says. That means she is the legal owner. She has the right to decide who is in her home. This is ridiculous, my mother snaps. She is my daughter. She would not have anything without me. I sacrificed everything for these children. Now she wants to throw me into the street like trash. The phrase rings familiar. It is the same performance she used on me as a child whenever she wanted to guilt me into compliance. I watch the officers carefully waiting to see if they will fall for it. Officer Henson's voice stays level. Ma'am, nobody is throwing you into the street, he says. But you cannot stay here if the owner does not want you here. If you refuse to leave, you can be arrested for trespassing. My brother steps forward, chest puffed. You cannot arrest us, he says. We are her family. This is family drama. You have no right to get involved. The door of the house next door opens and Ellen steps out onto her porch, concern etched across her face. She starts toward us. Officers, she calls. I am Rachel's neighbor. She has lived here alone for years. These 2 have never been residents here. They just showed up with suitcases this morning. I saw them. Thank you, ma'am. Officer Green says, that is helpful. A car pulls into my driveway then, and my stomach drops. Chloe steps out, clutching her purse against her chest. When she sees the patrol car, her face goes pale. What is going on? She asks, hurrying toward us. Your sister called the police on us. My mother says, pointing at me. Can you believe it? After everything we have done for her. Chloe looks at me, and for a second, I see the little girl who used to crawl into my bed at night when thunder scared her. But then I remember the coffee shop conversation, the mention of my house, the promise she made. Chloe, I say quietly, did you tell them to come here? Did you tell them to give up their apartment? Her mouth opens, then closes. I just told them you had room, she says weakly. I thought if you saw how bad things were, you would want to help. I did not know they were going to move out. That is a lie, Mark snaps. You said she would not turn us away if we were already here. You said she owed us after everything. Chloe's face crumples. I was trying to fix things, she whispers. I just wanted us all together again. By manipulating me, I ask. My voice is calm now. It surprises even me. By putting me in a corner where my only choices were to let them take over my home or be painted as a monster. Officer Green steps slightly between us, not aggressively but protectively. All right, she says. Here is what is going to happen. Ma'am, sir. She nods at my mother and brother. You are going to go inside, collect your belongings, and leave the property. If you refuse, we will have to remove you, and you may face charges. You cannot force yourself into someone else's residence, even if they are family. My mother glares at me with pure hatred now. You will regret this, she hisses. You think these strangers will take you in when you are old. You think your little company will last forever. Blood is blood. One day you will come crawling back and we will remember this. I meet her gaze and realize something quietly devastating. The grief I feel is not about losing them. It is about finally accepting that I never really had what I thought I did. I will take my chances, I say. They stomp back into the house. A minute later they emerge with their suitcases, shoulders stiff, faces twisted with indignation. They march to their car, throw the bags in the trunk, and peel away from the curb without another word. Chloe stands in the driveway, tears spilling down her cheeks. Rachel. I am so sorry, she says. I did not think it would go like this. I never thought you would actually call the police. That is the problem. I reply softly. You counted on me not standing up for myself. You all did. That is why you thought you could do this. What can I do to fix it, she asks. Right now I say, you can go home. And you can think about the difference between keeping the peace and enabling toxic family behavior. When you are ready to own your part in this without blaming them, we can talk. She nods broken and leaves. After the officers go, Ellen walks over and wraps me in a hug that smells like fabric softener and vanilla candles. I am proud of you, she says into my hair. That took guts. I stand on my porch watching the empty street, feeling strangely hollow and strangely light at the same time. This, I realize, is what real revenge looks like in my world. Not screaming, not slamming doors, just a woman refusing to be used anymore. The officers had given me a brochure before they left, a thin stack of pages about legal options for people dealing with unwanted contact or harassment. I read it that night at my kitchen table, the same place I had once calculated my dwindling savings. There was a section about restraining orders, about harassment, about the right to feel safe in your own home, even when the people violating that safety share your last name. The next morning, I called a lawyer, a real one. Not just an acquaintance who would offer vague advice. Her name was Dana, and she specialized in family law and protective orders. I sat in her office, hands clasped hard in my lap, and told her everything. She listened without once implying I was overreacting. People do not always realize that parents and siblings can be emotionally abusive or manipulative, she said. It is like there is an invisible shield that keeps us from naming it. But the law does not care about titles. It cares about behavior and safety. We filed for a restraining order that week. Temporary at first, then extended after a hearing where my mother and brother did not even bother to show. They sent a rambling letter instead, full of accusations and threats, and a few lines about how they had only tried to claim what was rightfully family property. The judge read it, raised an eyebrow, and signed the papers without comment. The order did not stop them from leaving voicemails, of course. You always were ungrateful, my mother's voice would snarl. You will get what is coming to you, Mark would mutter. Karma always finds people like you. Karma. It was funny to hear that word from them, when the tables had already turned in ways they could not see. I stopped listening to the messages. I blocked numbers. I learned that blocking is not just something you do on a phone. It is something you can do in your mind. At the same time, Beacon Street Agency kept growing. I signed a new client, a small family-owned clothing company expanding online. I hired another contractor, a project manager who turned our tangled processes into something smooth. The spare bedroom office moved into a small commercial space downtown, then into a larger one with windows that overlooked the city. Ellen came to the new office for a tour. Look at you, she said, taking in the framed campaign posters on the walls. Not bad for a girl whose own mother said she flew too close to the sun. We laughed, but there was a sadness under it. In therapy, a place I finally allowed myself to sit in weekly, I unpacked the story I had carried since childhood. That if I just worked harder, helped more, gave more, my family would finally feel safe enough to be kind. The therapist, a woman with gentle eyes and a sharp mind, called it what it was, a fantasy. Sometimes she said your revenge is refusing to keep playing a game you never agreed to. You are allowed to walk off the board. It was not a clean process. Some nights I lay awake, guilt gnawing at me. Was I a bad daughter? A cold sister? Was I breaking some unwritten rule by choosing my peace over their chaos? Then I would remember my mother standing in my living room declaring my home was theirs. I would remember Mark sneering about my fake family of coworkers and neighbors, and the guilt would fade, replaced by something sturdier. Self-respect. Months passed. The voicemails slowed, then stopped. Through scattered relatives and social media posts, I heard they had moved to another state, chasing a fresh start, with the same old patterns. I wished them no harm. I simply wanted distance. Chloe, though, was different. About 3 months after the police came, I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the looping handwriting instantly. I sat on my porch under the maple tree and read it. She did not beg. She did not ask for money or a place to stay. She apologized fully. Without the word, but appearing even once, she described how she had grown up watching our mother twist every situation to avoid responsibility. How she had mirrored that without realizing it. How she had gone to therapy herself. And finally understood that keeping peace in a toxic family often meant sacrificing the healthiest person in the room. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," she wrote. "I know that I am writing this, so I see what I did. I helped them plan an ambush on your life and your safety. And I told myself I was just trying to fix things. I was wrong. If you never speak to me again, I will understand. But if someday you are willing to meet for coffee, I would like a chance to prove I can show up differently." I cried when I finished. Not the frantic sobs from the day of the layoff, but a deep cleansing kind of crying. And for the first time, I thought maybe one person from that old family could join the new one I was building someday. In small, careful steps, months turned into more than a year. Beacon Street Agency now had a team of 7 regulars and a constellation of freelancers. We managed campaigns for local shops and national brands who liked the way we handled stories with heart. That phrase made me smile every time someone said it. Stories with heart. I had lived one after all. My house changed too. The bedroom my mother had tried to claim became a reading room filled with books and soft chairs and plants that loved the sunlight. The other spare room, once lined with boxes of old files, became a guest room for people I actually wanted to invite. Ellen slept there once after a minor surgery so she would not be alone. Mia crashed there during a snowstorm, curled up in a borrowed sweater and fuzzy socks. The backyard, once neglected, turned into a small garden oasis. I planted tomatoes and herbs, not because it saved money, but because watching something grow under my care soothed a part of me my family had trampled for years. On Thanksgiving that year, I hosted dinner for the first time, not for my mother, not for Mark, for my chosen family. Ellen arrived with her famous sweet potato casserole, Leo brought turkey and a bottle of wine. Mia baked pies, Ben showed up with his daughter, who immediately claimed a corner of the living room for her toys. A couple of clients who had become friends joined us too, bringing side dishes and stories. As we gathered around my dining table, I could not help but think of the last big family holiday I had spent with my mother. It had been at her cramped apartment years before. She had spent the entire evening complaining about who had not called, who had not sent money, who had not shown enough gratitude. By dessert, I had felt like I had swallowed a stone. Now the conversation around my table hummed with laughter. Stories about failed recipes, awkward dates, childhood mischief. The kind of easy chaos that comes when people actually like one another. At one point, Ellen lifted her glass. To Rachel, she said, "For creating a home where there is always room at the table for the people who show up with love." I felt my throat tighten. If you are a woman who has given more than she has received, you might know this feeling. The quiet astonishment of realizing you are no longer begging for crumbs of affection from people who cannot give them. You are sitting at a table, you set yourself surrounded by people who are there because they want to be. Later that night, after everyone left and the dishwasher hummed in the background, I stood alone in my kitchen and whispered a small thank you to whatever part of me had dialed those 3 numbers that day. Calling the police on my own family had felt in the moment like tearing something sacred, but in hindsight, it was the first honest defense of my own life. I did meet Chloe for coffee again eventually. We chose a neutral place, a little cafe halfway between my neighborhood and her new apartment. She had moved out from under our mother's roof. She told me into a tiny studio with creaky floors and inconsistent hot water. But it was hers. She looked different, lighter. There were circles under her eyes, but also a steadiness I had not seen before. "I do not expect anything from you," she said as soon as we sat. "No money, no place to stay. I just wanted to see you in person and tell you thank you for reading my letter." We talked, really talked. Not the surface-level updates we used to trade to avoid upsetting Mom. Not the coded language of sisters trying not to rock the boat. She told me about therapy. about realizing she had always stepped in to smooth things over to placate our mother to excuse Mark's behavior. I thought if I could just keep everyone calm, she said, we would finally have a normal family. I did not realize I was helping them hurt you. You were trying to survive, I said. But surviving in a toxic pattern still leaves scars. She nodded. Mom still tells anyone who will listen that you stole that house from the family, she said with a sad little smile. She tells people she is going to challenge your will someday, that she will make sure your share of any inheritance gets taken away. I laughed a short, genuine laugh. Inheritance, I said. From what exactly? She has no property, no retirement? I have already accepted that when she is old, she will expect one of us to be her retirement plan. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I know, she whispered, and I am terrified it will be me because I am the one who still answers her calls. You are allowed to set boundaries, I said gently. Even with parents, especially with parents who see you as a resource, not a daughter. I am trying, she said. I have started telling her no. She hates it. She calls me selfish now. But for the first time, I am not folding immediately. We sat there for a long time, two women in their 30s, talking about mothers and brothers, and the quiet kind of inheritance that no one writes into a will. Patterns of guilt, manipulation, favoritism, and fear. We cannot fix them, I said finally. We can only fix how we respond. Chloe nodded. Do you think you will ever talk to them again? She asked. I do not know. I answered honestly. Right now, the answer is no. Maybe someday if there is real change and accountability, but I will never again give anyone the power to walk into my life and claim what I built. She looked at me with something like admiration. I used to think you were cold, she admitted. Now I realize you were just ahead of me. You learned first that love without boundaries is not love. It is servitude. It was strange hearing my younger sister talk like a therapist. Strange and oddly healing. We agreed to keep seeing each other slowly on our own terms. No more secret reports to Mom. No more using me as a topic to distract from the latest crisis. For the first time, I had a sister who was not asking me to be the family savior, just asking me to be her sister. When I tell this story now, I sometimes see the same expression cross people's faces. Shock first, then judgment, then something like recognition. You called the police on your own mother, they ask. Yes, I did. Because here is what I learned the hard way. Sometimes, the most radical act of self-respect is treating yourself with the same seriousness you would extend to a stranger in danger. If a woman you did not know told you her relatives had moved into her house without permission, refused to leave, and threatened to spread lies about her if she made them go, you would tell her to call for help. The only reason we hesitate when it is family is because we were trained to. Today, Beacon Street Agency is thriving. My house is not a prize. My family is circling. It is a home filled with people I actually want there. The toxic dynamic that used to run my life from the shadows no longer dictates my choices. Do I sometimes feel sad about the mother I wish I had? Yes. Do I sometimes wish my brother had chosen a different path, one where he could stand beside me as an equal, instead of trying to tear me down? Of course, but grief and boundaries can coexist. Sadness does not mean I owe them access. There is a particular kind of revenge my story carries, and it is not dramatic. It will never be the plot of a courtroom thriller or a revenge movie where the bad guy loses everything in one spectacular scene. My revenge is quieter. It is my mother telling people that I abandoned the family while I sit at a table surrounded by people who would show up for me at 3 in the morning without asking what is in it for them. It is my brother muttering about karma while I sleep peacefully in the house. I kept with my own work, my own choices, my own courage, not his schemes. It is the fact that when crisis came again, they had no leverage over me, no shared accounts, no legal ties to my property, no emotional choke chain they could yank to make me comply. Most of all, my revenge is this. I did not let their betrayal turn me into them. I did not become bitter and stingy with my love. I became more careful about where I placed it. So if you are listening to this and seeing yourself in any part of my story, I want you to hear me clearly. You are allowed to set boundaries with parents, with siblings, with anyone who uses family as a weapon instead of a promise. You are allowed to protect your home, your money, your peace, your heart. That is not betrayal. That is self-respect. Family drama, inheritance fights, being excluded from wills, all the ugly things that happen behind closed doors during weddings and Christmas dinners and Thanksgiving gatherings. Those stories are more common than you think. You are not alone in your betrayal. You are not the only one who had to choose between blood and sanity. If my journey resonates with you even a little, I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more women, especially women in their 50s and beyond, find these stories of revenge, karma, and quiet payback when the tables finally turn, and I genuinely want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your own family? Have you ever walked away from a toxic parent, a manipulative sibling, or a relative who treated you like an endless resource instead of a person? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear tonight. Thank you for spending this time with me, for listening to my story of betrayal, boundaries, and the life I built on the other side. Remember, this chosen family is real family. Injustice does not get the last word, and sometimes the most powerful revenge is living well on your own terms, in a house no one can claim but you.